Hey, what's up everybody? So, pricing items in Path of Exile is a pain in the butt. Figuring out how much it's worth to you, how much value you want to get out of that, and what it's worth to someone else out there in the wild. So what this video is a primer with examples on how I think about pricing items. I'm going to go over everything that I've thought of in the past handful of hours as I was preparing this presentation, and just the general way that I think about pricing items in the game. No one is perfect at it. It is a very organic and flawed system, but there is a lot of interesting nuance in there because of that. What it isn't is a very exhaustive guide to every single thing that goes into pricing items in the game, primarily because it's incredibly complicated. And also, since the game changes so quickly and there are so many different nuances that get introduced every single patch, what you want to look out for the value of an item, I want to make a video that is evergreen and something that just teaches you to be able to learn and always be able to adapt and understand the market. And definitely in the comments below, put stuff in that I probably missed, because I want this to be a living evergreen reference that people can always go back to. Point all your friends that are asking you for price checking at this, and then they can teach each other and we can organically, elevate our knowledge base. So without further ado, let's get into it. So number one thing to me is know your item. Items in this game are very, very complicated, and definitely check out the crafting video if you want like the fundamentals of what an item is in this game. But this is actually the primary reason why this video cannot be hyper exhaustive. What an item is even can potentially change league over league, and things that are looked at for value can also change. At time of recording, this is 3.18 Sentinel League. Something got added to the game called the Recombinator, just covering my bases in case it's removed from the game after this patch. But a Recombinator allows you to combine two different items, and it allows you to take certain modifiers from one item that usually would not be transferable onto another item. So things along the lines of like a fractured T1 fire damage on like a really crappy bow, you can use a Recombinator and put it on something that you might value, like a thicket bow base that has a higher item level, and it will dramatically change how you look at specific things like that for value. You just need to understand what you're looking at for an item. So you're gonna wanna start off, looking at your item. Is it rare? Is it unique? It could even be a normal item that, has a really nice eye level. Like early league, an eye level 86, at least time of recording. Who knows, it'll be 90 by the time you watch this video. That eye level alone on a certain base might be worth something. Like the first couple days into a league, if you get like eye level 86 Goliath Greaves, you could maybe sell that for 50 to 100 chaos, because at the time that item dropped, it can be worth a lot because the supply in the market is very low. Everything here is just going to be so organic that this is why the complexity is there. When you ask someone else to price check your item, they're going to be looking at every little specific thing for what that item is. I spent 5 minutes writing down everything that might be on an item that you might want to consider. So really what I'm trying to get across here is like, know the fundamentals of your item and know even what goes into an item. And I'm going to have a lot of examples later. What is the rarity of your item? What is the eye level? What's the base type? Are the socket colors maybe with like Skin of the Loyal or Skin of the Lords? Those socket colors are not modifiable. And in that case, the specific colors of the socket actually matter. For a cluster jewel, the number of passos even can matter. We can have unique modifiers. So for something like a timeless jewel, some of them, like a Militant Faith, can actually have different modifiers that can't be changed, similar to something like a Watcher's Eye as well, where it is just static how it is. And those very, very specific roles can depend on what your item is worth. You want to look at rolls within ranges. People will pay a premium if you have a very perfectly rolled item. It has a very high variance in the roll ranges, and the closer you can get to perfect, a very, very perfect Venter's Gamble would be worth a mirror easily, because the probability of hitting that versus the demand in the market is, so astronomically different there. Very common thing, what are the links on the item? Difference between a 5-link and 6-link value of the item there. There may be even a weakness in the market there where you just have a 6-socket item that it actually will sell for more than 1,500 fusings as a 6-link in addition, so you can just bench craft it and always make additional profit there. Is the item good for different crafting strategies? If you have Tailwind on just a pair of boots, even if it's a very crappy pair of boots, Tailwind alone is usually worth at least a couple exalts, because crafters will use that to put onto another item with an Awakener's Orb, etc., etc. This is the section of the video that could be hours if I just went into every single tiny little detail. What I really want to get across here is this just takes practice. no matter what, we can't be fully future aware of everything that GGG is going to add into the game. You're going to want to understand the value of it's just a very organic, complex thing. So you're going to want to look at individual modifiers, the roles within those modifiers, and then the combination of those modifiers. Maybe certain combinations are harder to get together, or people are just searching for those combinations alone, and those two unique modifiers alone may have additional value. An example there would be a Watcher's Eye, that if you have ES gain on hit with Discipline, that's really, really good. Let's say that's worth like 5 exalts. And maybe you have something like gain of flash charge while affected by precision. Usually alone, that's worth like 10 chaos. It's actually not worth that much. But there are builds, at least at time of recording, I'm talking about the Watcher's Eye that I currently have, that modifier that's worth 10C is actually greatly elevated by being with another modifier that is worth something. Because the builds that are using that ES gain on hit Discipline are also, they happen to be also using precision, and they like that flash charge sustain. So that 10C may actually turn into being worth 1 exalt or more by being in addition to something. It's that rarity of the collusion of those multiple modifiers. And so as you're searching for your items, you're going to want to be starting from the baseline, like search each modifier individually, and then look at them in combination. This is where the complexity comes in, where someone could link me an item that says, hey, there's nothing on the market like it. The downfall there is there actually may be no value. There might be the opposite effect as well. There may be no value whatsoever by combining those modifiers. And so you have to know the value of specific mods. For example, if you're looking at an item that is for a Chaos Inoculation build, an ES only build, right? And it has really, really high energy shield. And you're like, oh, that really high energy shield, let's say that's worth 2 exalts. But also on your item, you have T1 life. That's so cool. You have T1 maximum life on that item, and T1 life alone is worth, let's say, 1 or 2 exalts. However, CI builds do not care about life whatsoever. Life does nothing for those builds. And if anything, life is actually blocking another prefix that you might be able to get something that would work for a CI build. So actually, if you were looking at a hybrid build, and you have to also consider that, a hybrid life and ES build, they may value that. But if you're looking at a CI specific item, and it happens to have T1 life, you're actually degrading the value of that item because that max life that's normally worth a lot is actually taking away. You know, you might enter in all your modifiers into Awaken PoE Trade or the trade site, and you say, oh, there isn't a single item like this. If it's a good item, people would usually be crafting for it, and there would be some sort of supply on the market. Now, you may have discovered an absolute hole in the market, but if you are not a more advanced player, that's probably unlikely. And most likely you're searching for very specific things that is probably just not valued. In addition, always be aware of your roll ranges when you're searching for the item. If you're searching for specifically like, oh, I have perfectly divined, resistances, and you only look for 48 fire res or higher, and it's top rolled T1, but you're not including also 46 or higher, you're excluding other things that can be just divined up. You have to really search within the tiers of your rolls generally, unless it's like a corrupted item. That's also another thing to be aware of, like really know your item intimately. This is just something that takes a lot of practice. You will make a lot of mistakes. I still make mistakes all the time pricing my items. This is just gonna be a thing that's gonna take leagues upon leagues of playing the game and making mistakes and practicing. In terms of just like raw pricing, like a specific item, if you say, there's nothing like this on the market, and I think I hit something crazy, sit down and try to understand the value of that item for other players. I've had people link me a pair of boots that had like increased burning damage and increased poison damage. There's like basically zero synergy or overlap between those. There's nothing like it on the market because no one cares. So you also, not only do you have to understand your item, look at that, perfect segue. You also have to know the market. What do people actually care about? What do people want? What are the trends and like, what's the ebb and flow of the market? This is a thing that I think is actually really not talked about. There's a lot of subtleties here, and you can extract a lot of value if you kind of lean into the complexity here and you try to understand it. So one of my favorite things is paying attention to the league trends themselves. It's changed a fair amount over the course of me playing this game in the past 6+ years at this point, but it's generally, pretty reliable. Humans are just very flawed and they're very short-sighted in general. So early league, everyone is going to be hyper valuing their first league start stuff. Everything like at time of recording, Skelly Mages, Poisonous Concoction, Explosive Arrow Ballista. Those are the current league start meta builds at the time of this recording. First couple days of league, everyone wants their Dyadian Dawn, everyone wants their Dead Reckoning Jewel. They want all of the things that enable their league start builds. but very, very few people are planning for the future. If you pay attention to the ebb and flow of the market in general, Cosprey's Malice, right? The cast on crit, Ice Nova, Ice Spear weapon, early league, the price of that will be kind of lower. It'll actually be depressed a little bit because everyone is just thinking about their league start item. Inevitably, everyone wants to play cast on crit. Basically, 1 to 2 weeks into the league, everyone's looking at their second build, and cast on crit is just reliably, for a lot of reasons. Check out the cast and crit guide if you're if you're interested in that. For a lot of reasons, everyone wants to move over to cast and crit. It is always like the trending second build every single league. And so when you're pricing your item, I would encourage you to understand the time of the league it is. If you get really lucky, right, and you get a really nice hunter chest that has +1 curse and T1 attack and spell crit, right? If you have this insane hunter chest that drops, just YOLO, right? Beginning of the league, that may not actually sell very well until a couple days in, people start moving over to their cast on crit builds and they start looking for items like that. Also be aware of the trends here as different archetypes will ebb and flow with the popularity as people are looking at their second or third builds. You can do that by looking at PoE Ninja, and then if you want to look at historical prices, you can look at PoE Antiquary. I really recommend doing that for kind of educating yourself on the market. You can do things like very reliable speculation. The price of certain things will be very high early and then very low later. Eval, you don't want to be caught holding the bag. If you're like, oh, this item is worth 5x and I think it's going to go to 7, but it might not, right? Like certain items like maybe a Tinker skin will be worth a lot as people are playing their Traps, Mines, Totems, Minions early league. You're going to swap to their second build, and that value just inevitably goes down, as the supply goes up. Also, we have to pay attention to the player market. Inevitably, people, like the population of the people that play the league will go down. The supply kind of goes down with them, but you have to realize like what people are farming and think about that. Like being able to speculate the market and understanding the trends, it is this microcosm of like an organic stock market that also has the additional thing. Like imagine if you wanted to buy like 10 shares of Coca-Cola, but you actually had to like drive to New York City and actually go to the exchange and hand them cash, and they'll hand you like a ticket for 5 shares. When New York City is sleeping, there's no off-market trading or anything in this game. Being aware of that is actually a very big thing. And that actually goes directly into my next point here. The Korean and European market tends to always have higher prices. The North American market, for some reason, I don't know if it's psychology or supply or what, but the North American market, you can very reliably watch as more and more people come online after they get home from work. The price of everything, supply goes up, and the way that North American people, in South American too, right? Like within that time zone, they will aggressively price things, and the price will drop very, very dramatically throughout the course of the day until like about midnight, 2, 3, 4 a.m. The Asian and European markets, supply goes down, North American pricing starts, falling away, and the price will just go up. There is this daily ebb and flow of the pricing, and you can sell certain items if you just like wake up early in the morning and just like log online and, sip your coffee, and you might just make a lot more currency. I've sold things for double the price of the NA pricing by just selling, late at night or early in the morning. Really, the most important thing is understanding that this is a synchronous market. Items just don't have inherent value. And I think I actually say this, in the next tab. There's nothing inherent to the value of an item. You're putting yourself out there, right? You're saying, hey, I think this is worth this amount. And you have to have this synchronous thing, right? Like it's a little bit like fishing. You have to put something out there that you are advertising a price, and you are saying, hey, this is what I think this is worth. Someone might whisper you and say, hey, that's, you have that at 15x. To me, that's worth 12x. And I think it's really important to understand that there is nothing inherent to the value of your item. You may be getting whispered by the only human being on the planet that wants to buy that item from you. It might have even cost you 15 exalts to craft that item, and you feel really bad about selling it. But if there isn't another human being on the entire planet Earth that wants to buy that item for you, or even a robot, you should just take that sale. I've been bitten by this personally in the past, where I crafted up this bow. It had like really good mods. I wasn't able to finish it. I tried to sell it for like 15x. Some guy whispered me like, hey, it's worth like 10x to me. Will you take it? And I was like, can you wait? I just want to try to, I really want to sell it for, maybe like at least closer to 15. And he's like, all right, I'll be looking for other bases. And I waited a couple hours, waited like 5 hours, and still no bites. So I got like desperate. I sent the guy a whisper like, all right, how about 8x? Can I just recoup my costs? And the guy was like, yeah, sorry, man. That's a good bow, but this is the wrong league for it. And I actually found a better base for me. And he bought it, he bought it for like 5x and he crafted up his bow. So at the end of the day, right, you have to realize that money in the pocket and saving your time is a very, very important thing. Trade in this game is very, very unique. No one's doing that trade. And you have to realize that also, as I was saying earlier, every single day that goes by in the league, fewer people are playing, and the quality of item that's generally desired, people that are remaining that are playing have more currency, right? The average amount of currency that a late league player has is probably in at least the dozens of exalts, right? And probably even more as we get to like the very end of the league. And so they are really only looking to like very min-max their build or looking for very, very specific things. So if you're in like week 4, 5, 6 of a league and someone sends you an offer for something and it feels like a low ball, but it's not too low, I would encourage you to really strongly consider taking that. They're just going to go on to the next person. And, 2 or 3 weeks later, no one even wants your non-elevated Tailwind elusive boots at that point. They're only looking for elevated as the league goes on, right? There is no inherent value. The value is just what a specific person is willing to offer you. And if there isn't a single human being that ever wants to send you an offer for that item, then you're just stuck holding the bag. And since trade in PoE is so organic, we're able to barter with each other for better or for worse. It is what it is. Check out the previous video where I talked about this and I said that trade sucks. But, it is what it is. And if we're living within these confines, we have to, we have to play by these rules. Also, with like the AM, PM stuff that I was talking about earlier, check offline. That may be difficult, right? So I would encourage you to maybe add them as a friend or just leave your client open overnight. Maybe they'll send you a whisper and you can coordinate with them a little bit later. You can send messages to people on the forums as well. Although I don't, no one ever checks those messages. Can be worth trying. What I like to compare the market to is it's like Tinder for exalts. Like, hey, baby, I got this real nice double elevated chest, and your 12 exalts are looking real handsome right now. If, hey, I just moved to California, and I know you want to go to Saskatchewan, and it's really hard to sync our schedules, and your 12 exalts are looking real nice, but this guy, I know he only has 8x. I got to settle for this 8 out of 12, but I got to get my body armor wet, if you know what I'm saying. And if no one's willing to make that trade with me within my my California time zone, is what it is. And I'd rather have 8 exalts than be a virgin 0 out of 12 exalts player, right? I don't know where I was going with that metaphor, but hopefully that makes sense. At the end of the day, it's just you might have to settle for NA pricing if you're not able to trade with someone. It is just this weird, funky, organic thing. I would also encourage you, just like put something out there, see if you get bites. Modify your price day to day. If you started at 10 exalts, go to 9, 8, 7, drop it by 1 a day. Have strategies with your stash tabs. Like this is a thing you'll see a lot of people do is they'll have like a, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 exalt tabs, and they will rotate them, right? Every single day, they'll just lower the price of each one of those tabs by 1 exalt, and then they will rotate them again, start over at 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That's a great way that you can kind of just like, if you have a high volume of items, you can just kind of fish by doing that. Just every day, first thing you do when you log in, change all of the prices of your tabs and just doing that every single day and then just keep rotating. And then in terms of the one last thing here is abusing the bots is, sorry, Chris Wilson, but there are a ton of bots. I trade with at least 2 or 3 every single day, and I don't even trade that much. Bots really are the lubricant that keeps the foundation of trade in this game working. You can very easily take something like static that like what I did this morning is I sold my timeless emblems. And the average price of like a timeless Mariketh emblem this morning was 99 chaos. And I wasn't getting any bites. Like I was just pricing it with everyone else. I dropped it to 97 chaos and I got whispered by literally 4 bots at the exact same time when I dropped that price. Because the bots are programmed to just be fishing for a certain percentage under the market. They're bots because they don't have any challenges and they're not ascended. I got whispered by like 2 witches and a duelist or something. And they all instantly whisper you, especially if I'm assuming that the price might go down or it's going to stay the same. I'm willing to, if I want to just have that money in my pocket, I'm just going to sell it right away. You can underprice things by just a certain percentage. And for things like breach stones or Mariketh emblems or anything like that, instantly, if you underprice by just a couple chaos, you'll get whispered by a ton of bots. Just make those items move. And actually having that money in the pocket is way better than if if Grimo comes out with a video, right? And he goes, hey, what's up, guys? Back at you again with Legion farming strategy. This is how I made 500 exalts yesterday. Grimro comes out with that video, the entire market, everyone's doing it, everyone respecting the Legion. whoa, market crashes, right? And so, you never know what's going to happen because this is a very small market and it is dominated by certain strategies that content creators are doing or builds that they're making. And that will just, the old Mathel effect, right? That will dramatically change the value of items, at least very temporarily, right? Once the market crashes, it'll rebound and just kind of normalize. But that's a thing to actually be very careful about. And I always err on the side of making sure I get that money in my pocket. You never know if Grimro's going to crash your market, right? So anyway, without further ado, I'm going to show you some concrete examples of how I would price some of the items of my current build. And there will be a wide variation in what I talk about and what I'm focusing on here. And hopefully this will give you a good walkthrough of how you can kind of understand pricing items and the techniques that I use. All right, so this is my cast on crit Forbidden Rite Occultist. This is a fairly popular build right now. We are about a month into the league, and we're gonna walk through a couple of my items, both uniques and crafted items, as well as a couple of different categories. And I'll show you how I would price it. It's all really flawed. As I said, everything is organic. You put that stuff out there, you try to make your best guess, and you can kind of like price things and make your best guess from there. That Tinder for Exalts, try to fish it out there and get an offer. We're gonna start off with possibly one of the easiest things. Also, what I'm gonna be using a lot is I'm gonna start with a tool called Awakened PoE Trade. This is a very complex tool. I do plan on making a video about how I use this tool. I'm gonna be using it very minimally throughout this video, but if you're interested, get subscribed for my instructional video on that. But anyway, I use a tool called Awakened PoE Trade, and I am able to just press Control-Alt-D, which allows me to move my mouse around with it, and it will give me an initial best guess of the item, and it will show me the modifiers on the item that I can then check on and off. It'll do a ping against the trade API and give you a best guess. It's not super, super robust. So generally what I'm going to end up doing is kind of checking things on and then clicking on the trade button right here. And it'll do a little pop-up of the trade website with the potential modifiers that were there. And then I can use this to kind of like tweak what I'm looking for to make it more specific to my search. This is generally what you're going to find me do when I'm doing my trade searches. Let's go over the item first. As I said before, the most important thing is know your item. If you're not familiar with the Watcher's Eye, it's a unique that drops not as much as I would like from fighting Elder. Elder and Uber Elder. Regular Elder drops 2 modifiers, Uber Elder drops 3 modifiers. And so the key here is knowing that those unique modifiers at the bottom, the top 3, life, energy, shield, and mana, those are always static rolls. Those do not change. And then the bottom 2, and then it will go 3. If this was an eye level 86 Watcher's Eye, it would have 3 modifiers. These are unique ones that are active for certain auras that are on your character. So the modifiers for this Watcher's Eye is energy shield gained on hit while affected by discipline, and flash charges while you deal a critical strike while affected by precision. And this is what I was talking about a little bit earlier in the video, is the ES gained on hit is very, very good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press Control-Alt-D. I'm going to search for ES gained on hit. And since I know that the roll can be modified by divines, I'm not really going to bother about the rolls here, right? I actually want to turn off that range and say, give me all the potential rolls for this. And then if I move my mouse down here, it'll search. And this tells me that regardless of any other rolls, if I just have ES gained on hit on a Watcher's Eye, it's worth between 5 and 6 exalts by itself. And now what I can do is I check that off and I want to search for just the flash charge, right? I want to look at each one in a vacuum. As we can see that this is just worth nothing. A Watcher's Eye for 5 chaos or less, right? Like is just not worth anything. That just means it's a throwaway that someone threw in a dump tab. Are there any builds that care about ES gained on hit and flash charges while affected by critical strike precision? And the answer, at least to me, is yes. We leave the ranges turned off and we search for them together. All right. Pretty cool, right? By itself, ES gained on hit, 5 to 6 exalts. Flash charges precision, worth nothing. But together, since they are valid on some popular builds right now it has additional value. However, there might be other stuff here, right? These Watcher's Eyes at 18 to 19 exalts, we're not getting that much information from Awakened PoE Trade. These might be 3 mod Watcher's Eyes that have a 3rd mod that's really good. So what we have to do is click trade here and see if they have a 3rd modifier that might be worth something that's really good, right? And so we look at this one, Critical strike multiplier affected by anger. That's pretty good. Recover mana affected by clarity. Not the best, but it's okay. This one is just a 2 mod, and then bleeding malevolence is very good. It's not the best, but it's an okay modifier. We want to look at the time that these were listed, right? These were all listed fairly recently. If they were all listed like a month ago, 2 weeks ago, no one's ever set an offer. That means that the market is pricing it very high, but no one's biting. So always pay attention to the time that the item was listed, but we can see that these tend to be selling, at least. There's not that many on the market. Other thing that I would recommend is don't do online only. If this is a very rare item, there's only 4 on the market right now, click any up here and then click search. And you'll notice there are a lot more on the market, because if I'm only looking online, there's only certain people online. If I'm searching at 6 a.m., I'm only looking at a certain subset of the market, and I really want to see the entire volume of the market, what's out there. And this like really opens up our eyes. So this one listed 9 days ago has our 2 modifiers listed at 10x. Now, this is the other thing. There's so much subtlety, right? This person, they may have quit playing 9 days ago. They listed it and they said, you know what? I'm done with PoE for the league. We just have to get like a bird's eye view snapshot of everything that goes into this. I'm actually incentivized to ignore this person. My assumption is they quit the league 9 days ago. And 9 days ago, 10 exalts was a lot, right? The average player is going to be richer at this point of the league. And so I'm going to ignore this person. And if we look at these other ones, all right, 12x 20 hours ago, this is starting to feel pretty accurate to me. 13x 2 hours ago, 14x 5 hours ago, right? We have to look offline. This looks way, way more accurate to me. Now, in addition, I'm looking, all right, this guy's got a Russian name. This guy's got a German name. All right, right? So now we're looking at the price of the European and Asian markets, perhaps. We have to take all of this stuff into account. What I would do is, since these people are offline, I would list my Watcher's Eye at 15x. If I don't get any bites, I'm probably going to wait like 4 hours. I'm going to monitor this, see when these people might get online. Then I might have to match their price if I need to sell it within a day. Or I may be patient and I may be willing to wait a couple days and see like the trends in the market. Who knows, right? Palstron could put out a build guide and says, oh my God, this is the most broken thing in the world. If you have these 2 modifiers combined, this is a must-have. Then this thing could be worth 30x in a day. You may just want to like go around, look at the big boys, see what builds they're going out and putting out there. Just try to get a good idea of what's being recommended. All right, Skin of the Lords. I think this is also a very, very good example. So Skin of the Lords, what is it? It is a unique item that drops as a Skin of the Loyal from Chayula, and then you use Chayula's Blessing to upgrade a Skin of the Loyal to Skin of the Lords. What it does is it changes it to say +2 of level of socketed gems. Very good. The downside here is you can only socket corrupted gems in this item. And the unique modifiers on Skin of the Lords here is you cannot modify the sockets, right? So this is where when you search for certain combos, is you actually have to search for exactly those socket colors. The socket colors cannot be changed. So certain combinations, like especially if you have like 4 blue, 2 green, or 3 and 3, those are very, very valued. So that's the first thing that you're going to look at when you're looking at Skin of the Lords, like know your item. The other thing here is it will give you a random keystone. And some keystones are really, really, really bad and they brick most builds. So if you search for Skin of the Lords on the market, we're going to do this. We're just going to open up the trade website right now, and you'll always see a bunch of like color combinations initially that are not very desired. 5 green, 1 blue, And then Supreme Ego is like really bad. You can only have 1 aura. Very few builds want to do that. Ghost Dance is incredibly good, but 5 green, 1 red, not very good. A lot of builds don't want to do that, right? You're going to find a lot of these that kind of are super bricky, or just like, yeah, paint attunement's fine, but there's some color combinations that are just not very desired. We know we have a really good color combination. So we're going to go 3 green, 3 blue. We're going to search for that. And now we're going to see a lot of modifiers that are very bad. Elemental Overload, bricks all crit builds. Blood Magic, you reserve all your life. Precise Technique, you can't crit. Elemental Overload, Avatar Fire, you can only do fire damage. When you're searching for Skin of the Lords, you have to look very, very specifically for what your combination is. 3 blue, 3 green, and Leaf Shade. Leaf Shade is incredible. I got really, really lucky. I was up late at night, and it was like 4 a.m., and I saw a Korean name listed my exact body armor here for 60 chaos. That's how cheap I got this. And currently, online on the market, there isn't a single one. If we do offline as well, there's 1 at 3 exalts. This was listed 24 days ago. So my assumption here is this person is just, they quit 24 days ago because they could very, very easily sell this for 6 to 8 exalts. This person is sitting on an item that is worth easily 6 to 10 exalts, but they clearly quit the league 24 days ago because they would be getting spammed the second they came online. And in fact, there's probably people that have added them as a friend on their friends list so they can get a notification when they've come online, just to send them a whisper and try to buy this item for way underpriced. All right, my two-stone ring here. This one is a little bit unique. This is a two-stone ring that at first blush, right, doesn't look spectacular, and it's not that good. But I think I did spend 1 or 2 exalts on it, and I think it's probably worth even more if I try to buy something equivalent right now. So the key here is I have T1 Despair on hit. I know that that is the most desired modifier on my item. In addition to that, I have a ton of elemental resistance. When you search for elemental res, you want to search for a pseudo modifier that just says the total of all elemental res, right? Especially with the harvest craft that I could change that fire to lightning or cold very easily. You want to look for that pseudo modifier that is generic, because that is something that's like very fluid across builds. Like people just want to look for the things that are difficult to change. So I know that the T1 Despair on hit is the most valued thing. The amount of elemental resistance is probably the next most valuable thing, or possibly is just tied with the 49 dexterity, which is like the main reason why I have this ring, is I need a lot of dex and strength for my rings to even use most of my items right now. So that's basically the order of operations for how I'm going to search for how much this ring is worth. First of all, I know that T1 Despair on hit is the most valuable thing. And so that alone, not worth that much. Now, very luckily here is Awakened PoE Trade does do the pseudo modifier of total elemental res. We're going to put that at 61. Now we can see that that raises the price to, 50 to 100 chaos. We're gonna have to delve into this and get a little bit deeper here to get some more subtlety here. And in fact, like we can kind of tweak this a little bit. We'll go down to like 50, make it a little bit slushier here, and we'll see that, okay, within a certain range, maybe if my ring wasn't perfectly divined, right, there might be some wiggle room here. Then the dexterity, that's actually the key of what elevates this, is that combination, right? So we know no matter what, Despair on hit, we see that the elemental res with the dexterity, all right, we're looking at a 5x ring. If I turn off the res, all right, the Despair with the dexterity alone, however, we're still looking at, 1+ exalts. And then the other thing I like to do, right, let's drop the range by, roughly 10 to 20%, and then do the combinations here. All right, now we might be looking at a more realistic thing, right? There might be certain breakpoints with that wiggle room of like being able to define within the range of your item that, I encourage you to just kind of like lower that strictness a little bit. And then obviously I have an open prefix for the non-channeling. That does elevate how much it can be worth, but it does add a lot of complexity to the search there. We're going to stay away from that. So let's go to the trade website and start looking at, the general wiggle room of what we have here, right? Like this one has full garbage prefixes. Okay, that makes it worth much, much less. This one has open prefixes. All right. And we can see that they could then finish the item very easily. Open prefixes, really, really good. But it does have less dex and less res than our ring. 4x ring here. This one's looking pretty nice. This is the thing is I encourage you to just do this practice over and over again. You have to understand, like, craft your own gear time and time again. Price your own items over and over again. Understand what's difficult to hit and what's rare to hit and like what goes into crafting an item, right? I see that this item has 3 prefixes, no matter what, and they're all bad, right? These are all really, really bad prefixes. So to finish this ring, no matter what, someone will have to buy from TFT or find it themselves a reforged keeping suffixes in Harvest to safely clean the prefixes. And then especially since they have an open suffix, they really want to protect it. They have to do multi-mod, suffixes can't be changed, and then reforge something else or a Veiled Chaos Orb. And so we're looking at minimum roughly 3 to 5 exalts just to finish this item. And so knowing that, having that crafting knowledge, strongly encourage you to get that crafting knowledge, which is obviously beyond the scope of this video. Really having that fundamental will help you so much to understanding that, like, I can look at this ring and say that, yeah, this is garbage. This ring is just like straight up bad, right? You can craft a better ring by just, if I'm just talking in the back of my head, right? I can take dexterity essences, spam it until I get Despair on hit. I almost inevitably have a better ring for less than Exalt. So just knowing that, we can see, what's good and what's bad. Now we want to find something that's very similar. So this is very, very similar to my ring. And in fact, you could argue that it's better. And, you know, in the back of my head, I'm thinking, I actually want to buy this right now. However, this actually has T3 dexterity, which unfortunately is not an upgrade for my character. I think I need the higher dexterity that I have right now. And so unfortunately, I can't buy this. It has just cold res on the implicit, not as good as the hybrid that we have on our ring, has more flexibility. You just want to get like a snapshot here. So if I were going to price my ring, just like, and it's very organic, right? There is no inherent actual value to my ring. It's what I can fish. Second to that, right? 14 days ago, like there's a reason no one's buying this. 11 hours, 9 days, 8 hours, 33 minutes. Okay, so I'm going to say my ring is in the 3 to 5 exalt range. My prefixes are pretty bad. We know our fire res is like tier 4, right? I think it was like pretty bad tier on the fire res here. Tier 5, actually. Yeah, with a really bad fire res, good dexterity. If I wanted to sell this ring and just make it move, I would probably just list it for 2 exalts. Perhaps if I had a lot of patience, I could maybe make it sell for 3, but the instinct here with the tier 5 fire res, not finished prefixes, I'm going to say 2x, just try to make it sell, 2.5 maybe if I want to make it a little chaos, and that's the way that I'm going to think about it. So these sorcerer boots, these are big boy boots, right? They have elevated tailwind, they have elevated cooldown recovery rate, they have T1 avoid bleeding. The avoid being poisoned doesn't apply to me because it's a CI build, but avoid bleeding is actually really, really nice. And then it's got onslaught and kill and movement speed, all that. I know, because I know how to craft these boots, that the prefixes are very easy to fix and modify later. The way that I'm going to look at this, right, is sorcerer boots good. I see that the energy shield is bad. The quality is bad. We can fix that a little bit later. But I know that elevated tailwind by itself, that alone, actually, look at that. So by default, it was saying white socket. We don't want that, right? We're looking at 8x. Let's look at the market. Let's see if we're looking at crappy bases. And these are actually really, really crappy. So by itself, if someone hits elevated tailwind for someone else to craft on, that's worth 11 to 12x alone right now. Funny enough, I bought my boots total for 12x because I bought them earlier in the league, right? It is very flexible based on where you are on the league, how rich the average player is, the desire for that item. My item is finished, right? This is a base for what it takes, what's going into crafting that item is worth, but my item is finished, right? So it's a little bit different. But we can just say, okay, in the back of my head, add 12x to, you know, how much the item might be worth. This is different because there might be a divergent target for what they're going to craft here. But we know that, you know, base with I have a good item, that's worth that by itself, right? I have elevated CDR. So we see the range is 16 to 20%. So if I search for elevated CDR by itself, make sure I check everything else off here, that is also 8 exalts. And the reason why that, is the current price of an Orb of Dominance, which is, you know, used to be called the Maven's Orb, is going up very, very quickly. These Orb of Dominances, when I bought my boots, were only worth 0.5x. Early on in the league, no one really values this. Pro tip, if you want to make a lot of money, speculation, and you can play a league for a long time, buy a bunch of Orbs of Dominance, and the price will always go up to at least 2 to 3 exalts every single league, at least at time of recording. If we think about the effort that it takes to elevate Tailwind, to elevate Cooldown, looks like those bases alone are worth about 8 exalts each, and then combining them, right, will take an Awakener's Orb, which currently at time of recording is an additional exalt. And then the result, right, on top of that is totally random. We could get a really bad suffix, you know, like a very low tier intelligence or something that no one would care about. And we could get full prefixes, which we'd have to harvest, reforge, keeping suffixes to finish, yada, 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 right? So we have to take that into account. Then we want to look at the combination of elevated CDR with the effect of Tailwind, turn off the ranges here, make sure we're looking at elevated. All right, bare minimum, all right? If we look at the worst case, look at this, unfinished boots, 21 exalts. Now we start looking at finished boots. What are their prefix here? Avoid elemental ailments is really nice. Got elevated CDR. It's got the 42% movement speed, which is actually not good for this build. You know, this is also just having build and market and meta knowledge. If you haven't been hit recently, since I'm playing Forbidden Rite, and this is generally for, Forbidden Rite is the popular build for these boots, you're always counting as hitting yourself when you use Forbidden Rite, so you've always been hit recently. So this is actually the not desired prefix. So this is actually not very good. So they hit a really good suffix, but we have to finish the prefixes if we want to make these really, really good boots. With all that said, this is a great base if someone wanted to finish that. I really like the avoid ailments there, tier 1. That's actually really good. If we look at this, I think we're just in this range, right? Yeah, we're in the 25 to 30 exalt range, leaning towards 25. I have a good additional suffix, but my prefixes are far from perfect. So, I could probably list these for, 23x and probably sell them very, very quickly. We see these all listed 1 to 2 hours ago. High priced items as well do take a while to sell. So if you list something for 20 plus exalts, do be patient. That Tinder fishing for your item, it can take a little bit of time to sell. I do want to just talk about cluster jewels a little bit because that's a mistake that I see a lot of people making. We're not actually even going to price these actively. I'm just going to talk about it. Thing to know, this is about just knowing your item. Cluster jewels can have large ones between 8 and 11 passives. Basically, the way that cluster jewels work is 8 passives is generally the one that is desired. With an 8 passive cluster jewel, you'll see that there is just one travel node between all of the notables, and it allows you to get to the medium cluster sockets very, very easily. This will give you the most efficient per node access to notables and the jewel sockets. This is very, very valuable for the average build that is just looking for the notables, and they just want to be able to socket in as many things as possible. On the other side of that, we have the 12 passive. Literally no one wants 9, 10, or 11 passive large cluster jewels. You either want to be min-maxing your value per point for getting to the individual nodes here, or you want to min-max your value by having every single small notable being the most value. You have to know very specifically what you're looking at. In addition to that, you'll see this is a perfect example, actually, is with the medium cluster jewel, you should know that there is no difference effectively between a 4 or 4 right here and 5 passive medium cluster jewel, because no matter what, with that additional 5 there, I can just skip that, right? And I always have a single node to travel to get to the small jewel socket. Whereas with a 6 passive, it actually would have an additional small node here. So there is an additional point that you would have to waste, no matter what, to get to your small jewel socket. There are certain builds. Right now, there are 6 passive medium cluster jewels that are desired at time of recording for ward loop or fake blood setups using like the trader keystone. So there are specific cluster jewels that do desire that 6 passive. 99% of them just don't care between 4 and 5 passives. And that's just a thing. It's like that subtlety of knowing what you're looking at. Luckily, Filter Blade through NeverSync is pretty good at pricing those and highlighting them. It's worth being aware of what's out there on the market and what the desire is and exactly what you're looking at. When something drops on the ground and Filter Blade highlights it, I encourage you to always work on your loot filters, be able to mouse over that, know what the market is. And this is just the complexity of the game. I'm trying not to put any subjective judgment here, but at the end of the day, no matter what, it's about knowing the market, knowing what you're willing to even put effort into selling and pricing and all that, knowing the value of that item as it fits temporally within the course of the league and the player base. Yeah, hopefully this was super instructive to you guys. As always, I want to try to answer those questions and elevate the knowledge base of, help out the average Path of Exile player. This is a very complicated topic. After crafting an item or finding an item, actually knowing what it's worth is such a complex moving target that the only way that we can talk about it is both talking at a very high level with strategy and thought process, all the way down into, spending multiple minutes actually talking about why a specific item is worth something. So please also, as I said an hour ago, I would love for you to put additional ideas in the comments below. I want to have as much information and have this as a great living document that people can reference and link to their friends. Every time you see someone asking for a price check in Twitch chat, you can just link them this video and say, hey, next time you can price your item yourself. My goal is to make sure that everyone can do the stuff that they want to do and be successful in the game. So yeah, that's going to be it for me today. I'm going to go for a walk and take a breather, and I'll see y'all next time. Have a good one. Bye.